this X300 John Deere today. Customer says that it won't run right at full throttle, that it sounds bad. He says he's been using good fuel in it, ethanol-free fuel, so that should not be the issue. Go ahead and first off like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and we'll dive right into this quick fix. I had mentioned that the fellow uses ethanol-free fuel, which is good. The first thing, if you're losing power, that you'll want to address, you want to make sure that you have good fuel and a good fuel flow. If you take off the fuel line going to the carburetor and put it into a bucket, it should flow great out of there. There should be fuel shooting out. There should be no restriction. It shouldn't be a small flow. It shouldn't be a trickle or anything like that. To keep this thing running, this needs quite a great fuel supply. That is going to be good on this. I don't see any issues there. Next, you can check your cylinders independently. So it's got two cylinders on this, one here and one on the other side. The easiest way to do that is after you run it. A lot of people like to just touch one of the down tubes of the exhaust and see if it's hot. If it's hot, you know that it's working 9 times out of 10, right? I like to pull a plug, ground it out, fire it up that way. That side runs, great. Then we can plug this back in and unplug the other side and see if this side runs. It should run independently of each other. Half of this engine, if it's running on one cylinder, will give you enough power for your mower to run, although it will seem like very low power because it is. Fuel quality is good. If there's no issues there, no issues with flow, and you're running on both cylinders, but you're still having issues, that's going to point to the carburetor for sure. Now, the carburetor could be dirty, could have some varnish or debris stuck in the bottom of the bowl or something like that. That's not exactly the case here, though. Before we fire it, what I want to point out is that you can check the spark on both sides if one's not firing or the other. Say we pull this side off, this side fires okay, but when we pull the other side off to test this cylinder, it doesn't fire okay. Test your spark. You can do that a couple different ways. You can pull a spark plug wire off and hook up a different spark plug, or you can pull the plug out and hook up that plug, but then just hold it to the side. I like to insulate myself with a rag. Hold it to the side and you should see spark in between the middle electrode and the outside edge. This one's got something in between it. It's not going to spark if that's the case. But if you hold it there, you should be able to see that spark. If you don't, you know you have an issue with the kill or with the ignition coil or something to that fact. If one side's working or the other, usually it's a bad ignition coil. That or mice or something have chewed up on the top. We like to use this spark checker. It's very easy to use and it's accurate, quicker than pulling the plug off or doing any of that stuff. Both of our spark are going to be good on this one. Everything's going to be solid. We know both sides are working. Let's test it out real quick just to make sure. Didn't want to start on that side for some reason, but it runs fine on it once we got it going. Looks like someone's been well into it. I don't know what the deal is with these up top, but they don't look so hot. All right, so that's telling us this cylinder's good. We just checked it with this one hooked up. That cylinder's good. Both cylinders are firing. But as we fire this up, let's see what happens on full throttle. To a trained ear, I can tell instantly when I fired this up, this last time when I just went to pull it in, that the choke is sticking, right? That's what I'm hearing, that's what I'm smelling. The choke, as this comes up, when I choke it, temporarily choke, that pushes the lever up, well, it should spring back down like such. Well, it's not. It's staying in the up position. It's staying in the choke position, which means as we're trying to run it, that it's choking out the entire time. Not good, and it will not run right like that. Pull the cover off here. If you're getting that kind of sound from it, and it's not the choke sticking, look at the air filter. A lot of times the air filters will actually be plugged enough that it's not getting a good fuel flow. This one looks great. Doesn't look like it has been that long since it's been replaced. What we're gonna do is we're going to take this apart and we're gonna fix this. There's a couple different ways you can do it, but I'm going to show you the one that is the most practical. Now these are 10mm bolts. Make sure that when you hook this back up, your ground wire goes there. And we'll take those off, and we'll take this one. I believe it just has to come loose, and you can pull it out to the side. That's good. And then we can take our intake. There is a hose attached to the back, which is fine. Move that little clip around right here so I can get to the back side. Get that breather hose off there. And now we have our intake all the way out. I am going to, since that ripped, we want to replace this gasket. You don't want to reuse that, otherwise it'll pull debris and stuff down in there. They make a repair kit for this where you can get a new choke rod and all that stuff. Honestly, it's not really needed. You can take out the choke just like such, just pull it straight out. It is the same thing for the back too, and that's more important. If there's any kind of break or any kind of tear in that gasket at the back, you will want to replace that before you put this back together. Remember which way this went. That's how it came out. Smaller part towards the right. Set it down at the bottom just like that. And then I am actually going to take that all the way out just so I can get this choke rod out. I'll show you where all these springs go. So the one spring, it looks like on mine, it's in the E, and then it's in the hole down at the bottom. So that comes through the back side to the E is where it's going to hang. I'm just going to leave it off to the side. Yours may be in a different hole here though, so pay attention before that comes off. And make sure not to lose this spring, it should stay on there also. Everything else should stay together here. Now that we've got that choke plate out, all we've got to do, move our choke rod back and forth and pull it out. Now while you pull it out, you'll notice that the spring is actually right down here, and it'll come out of that notch. It doesn't want to come out at all out of there. Seems like that's the area that is real caught up. Yeah. Pay attention again where these come out of. That's where that sits, just against there. So if you look, that sits in that notch right there. We'll blow all this out real quick, blow all that out, and then I'll show you how to fix this. I am going to take this all off. I guess there's a bird in here. I don't know if you guys caught that on camera or not, but it just flew right through as I was coming out of the closet to get some sandpaper. Still in here because I closed the door down a while ago. I'll open that up here shortly. All this stuff along here, that is all stuff that's keeping that choke in a bad shape. We're using a 600 grit sandpaper. You don't want it to be too abrasive. You don't want to put deep scratches into this, but we want to clean this plastic along here. We want it to be completely clean when we're done. And that's going to keep that choke from hanging up. That's the only thing that's keeping it hung up, is just right along these two pivot points where this moves back and forth. The plastic has gotten scratched or gotten dirt and debris on it. Again, you don't really want to sand it down. We're just kind of cleaning this plastic. Some people say you shouldn't do this because it will pull additional stuff through here. We can put, if you're worried about that, you can use one of these little foam jobby doos like they do on most of them, and you can put that here. That way it catches anything that would come to the inside. We'll also clean up everything right here real good. Make sure there's nothing in it. See, just with that little bit of cleaning, it's still kind of tight in there. It's a lot looser than what it was, but still tight. There's that bird again in the background trying to get out. Still tight, so we'll want to take some more off. You can almost kind of see where it's worn down a little there. A different spot. Had to close that door because the motor guys, we got electric motor guys 2 doors down, and they're making a lot of noise over there this morning. Sounds like me at 6 in the morning, right? At least I'm not the only one. Now look how smooth that is. There's no catching or anything. I'm going to do it one more time just for good measure, just to make sure we don't have this issue in the near future again. Again, these spots down here and down here are where they actually go through, and that's what you're focusing on. Make sure that's cleaned off real well. It doesn't have any debris that can be sucked down in there. And we're going to put our spring back on, just how it was. Seems like that's still got some stickiness to it. All right. And then we do have a little washer that kind of helps debris from getting in there to begin with. And again, I'm going to use just a little piece of foam, and that's just going to help anything from getting up in there. Make sure, again, you know where that goes. It goes on the back side right here, which lets you swing it back and forth. You can add some grease to it. It's good old penetrating grease. Just to those 2 pivot points, it helps a lot. It's in the wrong spot here. Go back down. Okay. So again, the spring goes directly under this notch here, and it should spring back each time. It should not hold up for any reason. Clean our choke plate off real quick. Put it back in there. If after you put the choke plate in you have sticking or anything like that, you want to address either the whatever you put in here. If you put some sort of foam in there, that could be the issue, depending on what you used. This thing is working great, springing back perfectly. The gasket in the back did not get ruined. I'm not going to worry about that, but I will find, again, a new one for the front. Scrape that off first real quick. You want to make sure you have a nice, good surface for you to mount back to. Do not scratch, don't gouge it or anything. Razor blade usually works best though. Oh boy, about hit me in the head. Don't worry, birdie, we'll get your door back opened up here shortly. It's very strange. They actually, around here we've got a lot of trees and stuff, but they usually don't come in like that. Don't blow in here and expect it not to shoot you back in the face either. All right. Now that we've got a gasket on there, got this all cleaned up, everything works well, is free. Put our intake back on. We'll hook up our breather tube at the back at the same time. Bring our clamp all the way up. We're going to spin it all the way to the bottom like it was originally. Not really sure that it has to be there for a specific reason, but that's where it was before, so that's where we're going to go. Our ground wire must go back. Again, this is an E, and then we'll make sure this choke is directly below, just like such, as we line everything back up to the stud here and the bolt here. Easy as that, right? Two 10mm nuts on the front. I did wipe all of this out, clean it all off real well. Throw our air filter back in. And again, this spring should be exactly as it's shown. Air cleaner cover back on. Let's check that choke. It's going up and down like it should now. Everything's working. Let's fire it up and see what happens. Well, the choke works, but as you can see, we're not getting very smooth running out of it whatsoever. That's going to tell me that we still have a carburetor or a fuel related issue. As I pulled off the fuel line going to the carburetor, fuel looks good, smells fine. We're going to address a carburetor issue at this point. In this case, I'm probably just going to drop the bowl, so you can take the bolts out, the 3/8 here on the side, pull that off, drop the bowl and clean it real quick. Guess I'll do that. And it's a John Deere, so they're 10mm. do want to be careful when opening all this stuff up or when pulling fuel when you're right above a hot exhaust. Obviously, it can very easily start a fire. So it's just those 6 10mm bolts. That whole thing comes off. And again, I'm just pulling the bowl. When we had all the rest of that off of there, if we wanted to, we could have pulled this whole carburetor. Definitely hot now. I don't want to drop fuel directly down on it. Just going to take some tiny pliers, something to get in there without ruining the solenoid. They take really skinny pliers, otherwise you can't get them off. Okay. Once it starts turning, you can usually turn it the rest of the way. Doesn't look like there's a ton down in the bottom. And it does also look like the bowl gasket is deteriorating. That's no good. We're gonna blow up through there. I'll run some micro drill bits real quick and put it back together and see how it runs. Obviously, I will want to get this bowl gasket replaced, and I'll get all this cleaned up while I have it off. Got my micro drill bits. Just gonna pick kind of a smaller size and run it straight up through to begin with. And that's just to make sure there's nothing stuck in that main jet. And if there is, it should push it on out. Pull it out, didn't see anything there. And go quite a bit bigger. Go to some of these bigger ones at the end. Seems plenty loose in there. Get a little again, I'm just running that up through there to kind of clean it off, clean it out, and then I'll use some compressed air to finish it. New bowl gasket. These fit pretty tight around them when you're going on there. It's very hard actually to put it on while the bowl is off, or while the carb's off, or on I mean. Still just a tiny bit small. Seems like you almost always have to stretch them to get them on there a little bit. Don't stretch too far or you'll ruin it. I'm just trying to put it on the lip that sits around where that bowl sits and get it even all the way on there, all the way around. Thought I had it for a second. There we go. Almost forgot about that bird. It's not going to let me, is it? It's not very happy to be in here. Almost, birdie. We'll get you out real soon. Got a new seal for the bottom because the other one was ripped also. I cleaned all that up on the inside. Hold it up on there, make sure that gasket doesn't move on you. Sometimes I just don't want to let you grab in there. big for these pliers too. All right, come on. There we go. Just a tiny bit further around. We're good. Okay, right on. Plug our fuel solenoid back in. I'm gonna put all this together while it's not quite so hot again before we run it. And these all go in notches to hold them in there. So there's a notch here it sits against, a notch down there, a couple here. Give it another shot. Well, there we have another one that shouldn't be hardly anything to get fixed up, right? And then it ends up being. Well, if you still have issues after you've done all this, that gasket between the carburetor and the intake, if it's got an air leak there, that'll definitely cause the issue. You can take starting fluid and you can spray that down all along between the carburetor and the intake. If you get any change whatsoever as far as your running goes, you know that you have an issue with an air leak there. That gasket will need to be replaced in order to get this back running right. This case, that fuel smelled okay and everything. I am going to go ahead and drain all that out anyway. Probably should have done it to begin with. It's just a good practice, even when somebody tells you they are using good fuel. You can't trust anybody in what they say as far as the fuel quality goes. You never know. They could have left their can sitting outside. It could have water in it. Anything to that fact. So I left that up to chance. It definitely runs good now. It runs better now, but I still don't like the blips it's getting every now and again. Once I get that all flushed out, I'm sure that that's going to solve the issue and get it taken care of, as there's not an air leak in between the carburetor and the intake. Check that during the break. Hopefully this has helped someone out in their quest to get their John Deere X300 or their Kawasaki V-Twin back into action. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content.